Dollars and Cents by Ariely and Kreisler. Picture this. It's 1975. You're standing in Hawaii on a TV game show set. Bright lights beam down on you, the crowd's going absolutely wild, and somehow you've made it to the final bonus round. They call it the Money Volcano. The host walks you over to this massive glass box, the door clicks shut behind you, and suddenly you're standing in the middle of a cash tornado. Dollar bills are flying everywhere, swirling around you like a crazy green blizzard. The buzzer screams, and for the next 15 seconds you have one mission: grab as much money as humanly possible. So what would you do? You'd lose your mind, right? Spinning, jumping, arms flailing like some kind of money-crazed windmill, snatching at every bill you could reach before time runs out. For those 15 seconds, money would be the only thing that matters in the entire universe. It's kind of a hilarious image when you think about it. But here's the weird part. We're all living inside that money volcano right now. Maybe not as dramatically, but every single day we're surrounded by this whirlwind of financial decisions, temptations, and pressures. How much do I have? How much do I need? How can I get more? It never stops running through our heads. You'd think with all that practice we'd be pretty amazing at handling money by now. We'd be financial ninjas, making perfect decisions left and right. But we're not. The reality is that screwing up with money is practically our defining characteristic as humans. We're incredibly talented at wrecking our financial lives. And for the longest time, everyone's been scratching their heads wondering why. That's exactly what behavioral economist Dan Ariely and his co-author Jeff Kreisler decided to figure out in their eye-opening book, Dollars and Cents. This isn't your typical, here's how to balance your checkbook kind of book. It goes way deeper than that. It's a detective story about the hidden psychology of money, pulling back the curtain on all the strange, irrational, and totally invisible forces that control how we spend. By the time we're done today, you'll understand why you're happy to drop more cash when you're swiping plastic, why a locksmith who takes forever somehow feels worth more than one who's lightning fast, and why just thinking about money can actually turn us into slightly worse people. Even more important, you'll discover that our biggest money disasters don't happen because we're missing information. They happen because we fundamentally misunderstand what money actually is. Once you see that clearly, everything changes. You can start spending smarter, saving better, and building a life that actually feels rich. Let me tell you about a guy named George. George is having one of those weeks where everything feels like too much. Work is crushing him, his kids won't stop fighting, and his bank account is making him anxious. So when he's on a business trip to Las Vegas, he decides he needs to blow off some steam at the casino. Earlier that morning, George had walked about 10 steps toward a cafe before stopping dead in his tracks and turning around. Why? Because he realized he could save $4 by just making coffee back in his hotel room. Look at him being all responsible and careful with money. But that same evening, at the blackjack table, a completely different George shows up. He loses $200 without even flinching. He even hands the cocktail server a $5 tip for bringing him a drink that was already free. Hold on. The same person, the same day. One moment he's obsessing over saving $4 on coffee. A few hours later, he's casually throwing away 50 times that amount without a second thought. What is happening here? This isn't really a story about gambling problems. It's a story about the absolutely bizarre ways our brains think about money. And it shows us the biggest, most fundamental money mistake all of us make. We completely fail to understand something called opportunity cost. I know, that sounds like something from an economics textbook that would put you to sleep. But it's actually simple and kind of mind-blowing. Money by itself is worthless. Seriously. A dollar bill is just fancy paper. Its only real value is what it represents, all the different things you could trade it for. Money is basically a symbol of choices you're making. When you spend $4 on a fancy coffee, you're not just spending $4. You're giving up the movie ticket you could have bought, or that book you wanted, or part of your phone bill. Once that $4 is gone, it's gone forever. You can never use it for anything else. All those other things you could have bought, those are your opportunity costs. If we were totally rational beings, every time we pulled out our wallet, we'd pause and think, what am I actually giving up? right now and in the future, by buying this. But we don't do that. Our brains aren't wired for that kind of complicated, abstract thinking. Imagine you're at a car dealership about to buy a new car. The authors actually did an experiment exactly like this. They walked around a dealership asking people, if you buy this Toyota, what won't you be able to buy? Almost nobody had a real answer. The best most people could come up with was something like, well, I guess I won't be able to buy a Honda instead. Hardly anyone said things like, this car means no vacation for the next 2 years, or I'll have to wait 5 more years to pay off my student loans. Our brains just can't hold all those infinite possibilities at the same time. It's overwhelming. So if our brains don't actually use opportunity cost when making decisions, what do they use instead? Shortcuts, mental tricks. And unfortunately, most of these shortcuts are seriously flawed. They make us judge the value of things in ways that have almost nothing to do with what those things are actually worth. The first and most powerful of these mental shortcuts is something called relativity. We're terrible at figuring out what something is worth all by itself. So instead, we judge it by comparing it to other things around it. Let me tell you about a woman the book calls Aunt Susan. Aunt Susan absolutely loves shopping at JCPenney, and she loves feeling like she's getting a deal. For decades, JCPenney had this system. They'd slap a $100 price tag on a sweater, then put a giant sign next to it screaming, "Sale! 40% off! Now only $60! Aunt Susan felt like an absolute genius every time she bought one of those sweaters. In her mind, she wasn't spending $60. She was saving $40. It was thrilling, like winning a game. Then, in 2012, a new CEO took over JCPenney and decided this whole system was dishonest. He got rid of all the fake sales and coupons and just started doing fair and square pricing. That same sweater was now simply priced at $60. No games, no gimmicks. So what happened? Aunt Susan and millions of other loyal customers absolutely hated it. They felt cheated somehow. They abandoned the store in massive numbers. Within a single year, the company lost nearly $1 billion, and they fired that CEO. Almost immediately, JCPenney brought back the old system. They raised that sweater back to $100, then put it on sale for $60. And customers came flooding back like nothing had happened. Think about how absolutely bonkers this is. People were genuinely angry about an honest $60 price tag, but they were thrilled about a fake $100 price tag that was marked down to $60. The actual final price was identical. The sweater was exactly the same, but the story around it had changed. A $60 shirt by itself seems expensive. But a $60 shirt that used to be $100 feels like you're getting away with something. We don't judge what something actually costs. We judge it compared to what we think it should cost. This happens everywhere. When you're dropping $25,000 on a car, what's another $200 for a fancy sound system? It seems like pocket change compared to the big purchase. But would you ever just walk into a store randomly and spend $200 on a sound system? Probably not. This brings us to another powerful form of relativity called anchoring. Anchoring happens when the first number we see gets stuck in our brain and messes with all our future judgments, even if that first number is completely random and meaningless. In this fascinating study, researchers brought in actual real estate agents to evaluate a house. They gave all of them the exact same information: square footage, neighborhood comparisons, everything. But they changed just one tiny detail: the listing price. Some agents were told the listing price was $119,900. Others were told it was $149,900. What happened? The agents who saw the higher listing price estimated the home's actual value way higher than the agents who saw the lower one. That first number, the anchor, dragged their supposedly expert judgment right along with it. And here's the really wild part. When they asked the agents afterward, most of them swore up and down that the listing price hadn't influenced them at all. They had zero idea they'd been manipulated. The anchor doesn't even need to make sense. In another famous experiment, students were asked to write down the last 2 digits of their social security number. Then researchers asked them how much they'd be willing to pay for random stuff like a bottle of wine or a wireless keyboard. The results were absolutely wild. Students with higher Social Security numbers were willing to pay dramatically more for the exact same items. A number that had literally nothing to do with anything became the anchor for what they thought things were worth. Once we make a decision based on an anchor, like paying $4 for a fancy coffee for the first time, we start doing something called self-hurting. We tell ourselves, well, I paid that much last time, so it must be reasonable. Our own past behavior becomes the anchor for what we do next. We assume past us was some kind of rational genius making perfect decisions, even if past us was just acting on a random impulse. So our brains get tricked by context and comparisons. But that's not the only problem. They're also hijacked by our feelings. And one of the most powerful feelings connected to money is something the authors call the pain of paying. Let's be honest, spending money actually hurts. Neurologically, the same part of your brain that lights up when you stub your toe also fires up when you have to hand over your cash. Because it's painful, we naturally look for ways to make that pain go away. This is where credit cards become evil geniuses. When you hand over a crisp $100 bill to pay for dinner, you really feel that loss. It's physical and real. You watch it leave your hand. But when you swipe a piece of plastic, the pain almost disappears completely. The payment happens somewhere in the mysterious future. The connection between the pleasure of eating that meal and the pain of paying for it gets severed. This separation does two things. It makes the experience way more enjoyable, and it makes us willing to spend way more money. Studies show we make bigger purchases, leave fatter tips, and are more likely to completely forget how much we even spent when we use credit cards. The authors share this great story about a honeymoon in Antigua. They decided to buy an all-inclusive package where you pay everything up front. It cost more initially, but once they got there, everything felt completely free. Every meal, every drink, every activity was pure joy because the pain of paying was long gone, just a distant memory. At the same resort, they met another couple called the Smiths, who had chosen the pay-as-you-go option. Their honeymoon was full of tension and awkward moments. Every single time they wanted a drink or to try some activity, they had to have this whole discussion about whether they could afford it. They were constantly feeling that pain of paying, and it was absolutely ruining what should have been an amazing experience. Same vacation, same beautiful resort, but just by changing when the payment happened, the entire experience was completely transformed. This leads us to another feeling that seriously messes with our sense of value, our sense of ownership. Simply put, once we own something, we think it's worth way more than it actually is. This is called the endowment effect. The book tells this story about Tom and Rachel, a couple trying to sell their family home. They listed it at a price they thought was totally reasonable. But potential buyers kept pointing out all these little problems, some chipped paint here, an old water heater there. Tom and Rachel were completely baffled. They didn't see problems. They saw the exact spot in the kitchen where their daughter took her very first steps. They remembered all the sweat and effort they poured into their awesome renovations. Every corner of that house was filled with their memories, their love, their hard work. To them, it was incredibly special. They genuinely expected buyers to see that same special value, but of course buyers don't have any of those memories. To them, it's just a house with some issues. Experiments show that sellers typically value something at about twice what buyers are willing to pay for it. This isn't people just trying to negotiate hard. We genuinely, deeply believe our stuff is worth more simply because it's ours. This feeling gets even stronger when we put effort into something. The authors call this the IKEA effect. After you've spent 3 frustrating hours struggling with confusing instructions, and that impossibly tiny Allen wrench to build a wobbly bookshelf, you absolutely love that bookshelf. You built it with your own hands. You wouldn't trade it for anything. Your effort has magically added extra value to it in your mind. Right alongside ownership comes its painful twin, loss aversion. Psychologically, the pain of losing something is about twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining that same thing. Losing $20 feels about twice as bad as finding $20 feels good. Because we overvalue what's ours, and because we absolutely hate losses, we become terrified of letting things go. This is why we hold on to losing stocks way too long, desperately hoping they'll bounce back, because selling them would make the loss feel real. It's why Tom and Rachel were so obsessed with what their house could have sold for during the housing boom years earlier. They were seeing the current price as this massive loss from that peak, which made it feel completely unbearable. Now let's talk about one of the weirdest quirks of all, our obsession with fairness and effort. Imagine you're locked out of your house late at night. You call a locksmith who shows up in 20 minutes. He tinkers with the lock for about 2 minutes, the door pops right open, and he says that'll be $200. How do you feel? Probably pretty outraged, right? $200 for 2 minutes of work. That's like $12,000 an hour. It feels deeply, fundamentally unfair. Now imagine that same locksmith struggled for a solid hour, broke a couple of tools, got visibly frustrated, and finally managed to get the door open before charging you that same $200. You'd probably feel way better about paying him. You might even throw in a tip. This is completely irrational when you think about it. In both scenarios, the result is identical. Your door is open and you can get inside. The first locksmith was obviously a skilled expert who saved you an entire hour of your life. The second one was clearly incompetent. Yet we feel way better paying for the incompetence because we could see the effort and struggle. We value effort and struggle, often way more than we value the actual result. This is also why we get so angry when a convenience store raises the price of umbrellas during a sudden rainstorm. The effort required to sell that umbrella hasn't changed at all, so jacking up the price feels like pure exploitation. It feels unfair. And we'll often choose to walk home getting completely soaked, basically punishing ourselves, just to punish the store for what we see as unfairness. We reject a genuinely good value, staying dry, purely out of spite. So far, all of this might feel a bit depressing. Our brains are full of glitches and bugs that make us terrible with money. But the final, and actually most hopeful part of the book, is about what we can actually do about all this. And it starts with facing our biggest challenge head-on: self-control. We all have two different selves living inside us: present self and future self. Present self lives in a world of vivid emotions and immediate temptations. That chocolate cake sitting right in front of you? It's practically screaming your name. That shiny new motorcycle in the showroom? You can literally feel the wind in your hair right this second. Future self, on the other hand, is this vague, abstract stranger. Saving money for future you can feel like giving your hard-earned cash to some random person you don't even know. Who cares about some old person sitting around 30 years from now? Present you wants that motorcycle today. This is the heart of the self-control problem. We dramatically undervalue the future in favor of whatever feels good right now. This is why a guy named Rob in the book, despite earning a decent living his entire life, has saved almost nothing for retirement. Every single month, future Rob was supposed to start saving, but present Rob always found something way more exciting to spend money on. So how do we actually overcome this? The authors suggest we shouldn't try to fight our irrationality through sheer willpower. Willpower is limited and runs out, but temptation is literally everywhere. Instead, we should build systems and structures that work with our flawed nature instead of against it. They call these Ulysses contracts. In the ancient Greek epic, the hero Ulysses knew he wouldn't be able to resist the beautiful but deadly song of the sirens. So he had his sailors physically tie him to the mast of the ship. He could still hear the enchanting song, but he was physically unable to steer the ship into the rocks and destroy everything. We can do the exact same thing with our finances. A 401k retirement plan with automatic paycheck deductions is a perfect Ulysses contract. You make one decision, one single time, to start saving. After that, the money gets taken out of your paycheck before you ever even see it. You've tied yourself to the mast. You don't have to use precious willpower to resist temptation every single month. The system does it for you. The authors share this beautiful story from an experiment they ran in Kenya. To encourage saving, they gave some people a simple gold-colored coin with 24 numbers printed on it, representing the 24 weeks of the study. They were supposed to keep the coin somewhere visible in their home, and each week they managed to save money. They'd scratch off a number. Other people in the study were offered actual financial bonuses for saving literal free money, which logically should have been a way stronger incentive. But the coin worked better, by a huge margin. Why would a cheap coin beat free money? Because saving is invisible. Nobody sees your 401k balance growing. It's just numbers on a screen somewhere. But the coin was physical and tangible, and sitting right there in their home as a constant reminder. It made the invisible act of saving visible and real. It made the distant future goal present in their daily lives. This is the real key to everything. The solution to our money problems isn't becoming perfectly rational robots who never make mistakes. It's about acknowledging our very human quirks and limitations, and then designing our environment and systems to gently guide us toward better choices. It's about making saving happen automatically. It's about using physical reminders of our goals. It's about translating abstract dollar amounts into concrete, real-world trade-offs we can actually picture and feel. It's about understanding that the battle for financial well-being isn't really a battle of spreadsheets and budgets and math. It's a battle that happens in our minds and hearts, and the beautiful truth is, it's a battle we actually can win. As we close this journey through dollars and cents, what really stays with me is how compassionate this book is about our human condition. It's not wagging its finger at us for our mistakes. Instead, it's holding up a mirror with warmth and genuine wisdom, showing us why we make these mistakes in the first place. The greatest insight here is that traditional financial literacy, knowing how to budget or understanding what a stock is, simply isn't enough. The real secret to a healthy financial life is psychological literacy, understanding those hidden scripts constantly running in our own minds. For a young person just starting their financial journey, this knowledge is honestly like having a superpower. We live in a world of one-click purchases, buy now, pay later schemes everywhere, and completely frictionless digital payments. The pain of paying has been almost completely engineered out of modern life. Understanding this concept deeply, and then consciously choosing to reintroduce some of that friction, is probably the single most important financial habit you can possibly build. So how can you actually start putting these ideas into practice today? Here are a few simple actions you can take right now. First, try what I call the 24-hour rule. For any purchase that's not essential and costs over, let's say, $50, force yourself to wait a full 24 hours before buying it. This simple act of waiting breaks the emotional spell of wanting something right this second. It gives your more rational, future-thinking self a real chance to weigh in on the decision. You'll be amazed at how many things you thought you absolutely needed suddenly seem way less important just one day later. Second, start translating dollars into actual life. Before you buy those expensive sneakers or the latest video game everyone's talking about, stop and ask yourself, how many actual hours of my life do I have to work to pay for this? If you're earning $15 an hour, a $150 pair of shoes isn't just a dollar amount. It's 10 hours of your actual life. 10 hours you can never, ever get back. When you frame it that way, is it still worth it? This simple mental reframing makes opportunity cost tangible and real instead of abstract. And finally, for just 1 week, try this powerful experiment. Create what I call a friction jar. Go to your bank and physically withdraw the cash you'll probably need for the week. For 7 full days, pay for everything. Your morning coffee, your lunch, your gas, everything, with actual physical money. Feel those bills leave your hand. Count the change you get back. Notice that small sting of pain. It might feel inconvenient and even a bit weird, but I genuinely promise you, it will be one of the most powerful financial lessons you'll ever experience. You'll become instantly more mindful and aware of exactly where your money is actually going. That was a summary of Dollars and Cents by Dan Ariely and Jeff Kreisler. We've definitely hit the major highlights today, but I'll be honest with you. Any summary can only ever be like a map of a beautiful country. The real magic happens when you actually travel there yourself, when you experience it firsthand. It's in those quiet moments when a particular story, or even just a simple phrase, hits you in a way you didn't expect and changes how you see things. This summary is really designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time and attention. If anything we've talked about today has genuinely resonated with you, I really encourage you to grab a copy and read it yourself. Reading it isn't just about learning facts and concepts. It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see yourself, your choices, and the world around you. You'll find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and helpful, please take just a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me know that these deep dives are meaningful to you, and it makes sure you won't miss our next exploration into another potentially life-changing book. Let's keep learning and keep growing together.